Very recently, a 4-month mission finally came to an end. But let me take you back to May. It was soon after my spring campaign in the marsh that I decided to hit up a local swim that had yielded some incredible results for me in the past. Unlike previous years, however, I had a mission in mind. I wanted to set up my action camera and capture a take underwater. If you follow along with my adventures, you will know that myself and Galen of O&T Carping decided to give this a go last year to great success. On our one and only session out together that year, we managed to land 4 fish on the underwater camera and see plenty of incredible fish that were in this particular stretch of river. This will all become more important later, but needless to say, I thought to myself, well, that's easy. I can do that. As it turns out, this is a lot more challenging than it looks. There are so many hurdles that you don't even realize exist until you're faced with them. And from that first session, I got to experience every single one of those hurdles. It was a lot of falling flat on my face, but I got some incredible footage along the way and learned some valuable lessons. The first hurdle that had to be overcome, which truthfully was likely the reason for a lot of my strife, was that this was not a live streaming underwater camera. Unlike Galen's Markham or an Aquaview or another similar product, I simply strapped an action camera inside of a waterproof housing to a rock and crudely lowered it into the spot that I planned to fish. As you can imagine, it didn't always go as planned, and in fact, more times than not, the camera was angled too high or, in some cases, too low, thus missing out on a great deal of footage and even compromising some footage where a fish had taken in frame, except it was just its tail. Another hurdle that came up quite often, particularly during the sessions at my neighbor's place, was the excessive weeds and debris. Occasionally, I would put the camera down and it would be perfectly clear. I'd drop the rig in and things would look good for like 5 or 10 minutes. And then suddenly, some debris would wash in and cover my lens. Or at the very least, would bury my rig. You can imagine my frustration. However, what was cool was, on a lot of these sessions, I did get to see some incredible specimens. So the efforts weren't all for naught. One such example was seeing my stepdaughter's fish mere moments before she caught it. But of course, it was on the other rod. And this seemed to be a bit of an ongoing trend that I noticed. And another hurdle. Sometimes, the fish just don't want to feed where you have the camera. On one particular session, I had the cameras in for some 3 or 4 hours and had 8 fish on the other rod that was only 15 to 20 yards away. They just didn't seem comfortable feeding up close, which led to me hypothesizing that perhaps the camera lens was emitting a flash and startling the fish, or perhaps a bit of an electrical current or something was turning them off. But then other times they would just happily swim right in front of the camera, and even stop and investigate the rigs, only to swim off. So the jury is still out on that one. The next hurdle I faced was, truthfully, just the story of an angler's life. I just simply ran out of time. I would get about an hour and a half of footage per battery. And, well, I only had 2. But oftentimes I thought, oh yeah, 3 hours will be enough. I can't tell you how many times I managed to get a fish just after the camera had stopped recording, or, in some cases, right after the memory card went full. Always remember to check the cameras to make sure you don't have old footage, because, yeah. The next major hurdle that I faced, and truthfully the one that almost made me give up, was condensation. This was the one that nearly did me in. It was in July, just before my bachelor party weekend, when I set out with high hopes. And well, I did manage to get the fish to take on camera. Not once, but twice, including a double header that was instantaneous. But there was one major problem. When I put the new battery into the camera after the first one died, my fingers just so happened to be a little bit wet. Not a lot, but just enough that when I had my fingers on the outside of the camera body, they left a little bit of water inside the housing. This led to condensation building up on the lens and completely muddling the shot. I was devastated. There are a number of other considerations and likely a few hurdles that I've missed here, but I think most of everything that was worth mentioning has been mentioned, except for this last thing. And it's probably one of the biggest things that you don't really think about until you have to do it. And that's that you can't just put an underwater camera anywhere. And on top of that, you have to consider just how much disturbance you're putting into your swim. As I wasn't live streaming, I had to consider that my camera had to be visible when I was swimming out to put bait over top and to put my rigs in position. Had I been live streaming, I could easily throw the rigs out and look back to see if they'd landed in frame. But because this wasn't a possibility with my setup, I had to get the camera in a place where I could see the bait and my rigs in front of it. This kind of restricted me to fish in areas with higher clarity and in shallower depths, so that I would be able to get the camera and bait and everything in a position with more confidence. To make a long story short, there's a lot of hurdles, and I think going forward, I'm going to leave the underwater stuff to my good friend Galen over at ONT Carping. He's just better equipped with the better product, and I'm not going to try to steal his thunder. The man knows what he's doing, he's had plenty of experience, and I think it's really cool that he does the case studies that he does and that he's dedicated his entire YouTube channel to these missions. If you haven't checked him out already, I highly encourage you do so. It helps take a lot of assumption out of your angling. After encountering all of these hurdles, I just about threw in the towel. But after conversations with Galen and realizing that he had undergone the same trials and tribulations as I was going through when he was using an action camera, I realized I just needed to take a break and go enjoy some other angling. And that I did. Additionally, I had a very significant event that I was planning for, that I'll talk about in another video. After 2 months away, I decided that it was time to finally give it a go once again. I got the underwater camera in an optimal position, dropped both of the rigs right in frame, trickled some bait in, set up the run camera, and accepted that whatever was going to happen was going to happen. I remember checking my phone and seeing that it was around 9:30. When that rod finally ran, I got this feeling that it may have come too late, but I wouldn't be certain until I reviewed the footage.
Lovely little river warrior. Bit of a great scrap. And let's hope that that underwater camera was recording after all. It was definitely in frame. I just hope I didn't run out of battery. Guess we'll see.
When I checked the footage, I was astounded to see the caliber of fish that were in that swim, including the mirror that I had landed with Galen on the underwater episode from last year, and that big fully. What an amazing target that fish has turned out to be. A very wise and very wily fish that just seems to know that something's up. After continuing to review the footage, I started to lose hope. It was clear that the fish were very cautious and were feeding very selectively. I thought that there was a real chance that camera battery ran out before that fish finally bit. And then it happened. I had achieved my goal. And thus concludes a 4-month journey. But clearly, there's still some unfinished business in this stretch. Thanks for watching.